say the Chinese, because they're always the bad guy, right? So the Chinese developed quantum computing before anyone else. And then they decide, what do we want to do with this quantum computing? Oh, break Bitcoin. You know, is that what you would do with all of your hydro dams and nuclear plants and coal-fired power plants in China if you became quantum computing? And you were able to hold it proprietary amongst yourself and it not get distributed to anyone else? You would choose to repeat all of the proof of work within the Bitcoin blockchain. That's what you do with it. And like I said, who's to say that we wouldn't have access to that technology as well?
Well, and you're pushing the difficulty up on yourself too.
Sure.
So you can only do it for so long until the network adjusts. Increases the difficulty, and then you have to get more quantum computers and spend more energy, and so the cycle just keeps going up and up.
There's the difficulty of just every 2016 blocks. So say they started their attack on Bitcoin in that time frame that there was 2016 blocks. So they have to turn it all on at once, rehash everything in 2016 blocks, which is about 2 weeks, and then the difficulty is going to adjust. So, like Rev.Hodl just said, they'd have to put all that material back online and increase the amount of hash. It's just a lot of work to undo and outperform all of the proof of work that we already have distributed within our network. So when we see difficulty go up, when we see hash rate go up, we're currently at 380 exahash. We, as miners, it sucks for us because we're not going to hit as many blocks during that time. Competition is more difficult, so it hurts us in our pockets. But we know deep inside that the network is even more secure as the difficulty increases and hash rate increases.
Good to hear.
I'm sorry, say again? The time period is set, yeah.
Doesn't matter what happens, it's not going to change.
It's not the time period, it's the amount of blocks. And so if you say, it's going to change. If you have the average block time of 9.5 minutes, then the difficulty is going to go up over the next difficulty adjustments. If blocks are coming in slower than that 10-minute target, the difficulty will go down a little bit to enable miners to maintain that 10-minute block target. But it is the number of blocks, and we go for the 10-minute average. So you can predict the next difficulty adjustment, but it's just going to be a prediction.
And that's exactly what we're seeing right here, right? It's at 9.5 minutes. Blocks are coming in at 9.5 minutes, which means when 2016 blocks pass, the difficulty will go up by 5.15%, which means all the miners are actually making less when that happens, but it brings the block time average back to 10 minutes, which is what we're targeting, so that the 21 million coins are distributed at a constant pace.
Well, on the quantum computing, it's important to put out, this is all in theory. There's like no quantum computers out there. This is a hope, a theory that somebody has, maybe at some point in the future, and you got the Bitcoin core devs are the smartest people on the planet, in my view. If you did have a quantum computing coming, they're going to be way ahead of it, ahead of everybody else. And SHA-256 basically encrypts so many things. There's so many other targets. The whole global financial system, we use SHA-256 to encrypt everything. There's tons of low-hanging fruit. Bitcoin is not that low-hanging fruit.
And I just read an article in Forbes magazine last year, Bitcoin miners use more electricity than the country of Ukraine. So what kind of other country is going to be able to dedicate those type of resources to try to undo what's already been done?
Well, yeah, you're just not gonna, you gotta put together the power, you gotta be able to put the hardware, try to come up with 3 billion XPs right now. I mean, it's impossible, we can't build them.
I think Nick can get that for you. You can get 3 million XP.
Well, do you think we should back up a little bit and introduce ourselves?
Yeah.
I guess I'll start then. Hi everybody, I'm Rev.Hodl, I'm Carl. You can find me on Noster. I'm coming to this panel from the perspective of home mining, and I like to say I put my miners to work. I try and give a job to my miners beyond just producing the hashes to get the Bitcoin. I use the heat to produce products for myself. And we can talk about that a little later, but it sounds like we're interested in talking about some of the technical aspects of mining too, so go ahead, John.
Hi, I'm Jon. I have a podcast in Pleb Miner Monthly on Bit by Bit. I'm mainly a home miner, so I currently run 7 S19s in my home. But on the podcast, we focus from small scale mining to home mining and everything in between. Give advice for people who want to start mining at home, how to capture the heat, like Carl does. For the past 3 years, my wife Sarah and I have heated our home with Bitcoin miners. So we just try to build a community of miners to spread the word of how to do it, how to get involved in it, and if you want to do it at home, you can, or if you want to host it. I think Tyler can talk more about that.
Yeah, I'm Tyler, Big CohooNah online. I home mine a little bit. I have 1 or 2 machines with a buddy up the road. It's very hard to do in Michigan because it's so expensive. But I guess what I bring to the table is I work for a hosting company called Compass Mining, and so we have hosting partners around the U.S. and Canada. And because mining these guys are home mining, they're reusing their heat to kind of make it profitable for them. But if you're trying to just chase low power costs, which is difficult in Michigan especially, sometimes hosting makes a lot of sense for you to have it plugged in with somebody who can get a cheaper rate, 7-8 cents. But that comes with a lot of risks. You are handing over your machines to people to plug in for you. But no, I'm excited to talk about everything with you guys and get into energy and home mining and whatnot. Yeah, maybe this is a good branching out point. So he kind of explained some of the technicals of this stuff, and to the layman, I don't know all your guys' experience levels, but it just sounds so ridiculous. Like, why is this so complicated? It doesn't make any sense. I always like to tell people this when I'm explaining mining to them and trying to explain the technical depth of it. The reason it is so complicated is because it has to be decentralized. The reason we use proof of work, the reason we're rolling dice, we're putting data through the SHA-256 algorithm and just crossing our fingers as we get those, 19 leading zeros, is because that randomness is kind of the only way to make sure that there's no central attack vector. All these other coins, proof of work, proof of stake, there's always one person they can go and torture and convince them to change something. Same with the dollar, right? If we put a gun to the president's head, we could probably swindle some stuff. But because this is all proof of work, random, it is the true way to allow this to be decentralized, live and breathe without a central owner. So I like to preface a lot of this mining talk with that because it just, otherwise the eyes roll in the back of the head and whatnot. I don't know, where do you guys want to go from here?
Well, I have a question. How many people here have plugged in a miner before or have done anything with mining at all? Okay, so we've got some people that are familiar, great. But there's plenty of people here that have not had a chance to plug in a machine yet. And so I guess I have to keep that in my mind when I'm using the language. So I guess we get it.
Kind of set up what you got going at your place.
So John, actually, I had started mining. I have a solar power system that powers a yurt that I rent on Airbnb. And so I realized that when there's not guests there, I'm producing some extra power with the solar panels. And I thought, well, is there a way that I can plug in a Bitcoin miner and access some of that free electricity? That helps to subsidize the cost of my system. So I reached out to John to see some advice. John actually connected me with Chet, and Chet came over, and I call Chet my mining mentor, right? Chet has helped me and encouraged me through a lot of the projects that I've started with. But I started with plugging an S9 into my solar panel system. And I wasn't reusing the heat, I wasn't mining in a pool. I was mining in a pool, but I was solo mining. So I had so little hash rate that it didn't make sense for me to try and just acquire the small trickle of Bitcoin that I would have had access to. Instead, I was just gambling for that shoot the moon. Maybe I can hit one block with these 5 terahash that I had on my S9. From there, it became wintertime. Summer turned into wintertime. The sun is less. I'm producing less power with my solar panels, but it's cold outside. So then I started playing around with using that S9 to supplement the heat in my home. I do have an air source heat pump, but if I'm using electricity to heat my house anyways, why not do some hashes first? And that's what a lot of us are doing here to make mining more profitable, is reuse this heat. Well, once I figured out that that was successful, I started hearing about, you know, these ideas. Can you do dehydration, food dehydration with Bitcoin mining? Can you make a clothes dryer? Can you heat a greenhouse? And so I wasn't seeing too many people. I saw a lot of people talking about it, but not a lot of people actually trying it out. And so the next thing I built was a Bitcoin mining cold frame. So I was growing my vegetable starts in this small glass box, heating that with the S9. After that, you get addicted to hashing. It's like you want to, once you have that miner, you want to have that thing running any way you can. And so after that, I said, well, maybe I can build a dehydrator. Spring's coming. There's going to be a lot of, I have a 20-acre homestead where I produce a lot of my own food, and I'm wild foraging these herbs and stuff. Well, if I could create a dehydrator, and it's, once again, instead of plugging an electric dehydrator in the wall, why not put a Bitcoin miner in between that wall plug and the hot air coming out, and turn some hashes on while I'm producing these products in the dehydrator. After successfully building that, the next project was the clothes dryer. And all I really had to do was bite the bullet and cut a hole in the back of my dryer and hope I didn't destroy that thing. But after that was successful, all you have to do is put a coupler in there, and plug your Bitcoin miner right in, turn it on, and boom, you're drying your clothes and mining Bitcoin. And so, basically, like I said at the beginning, my approach to Bitcoin mining is like, how can I give my miner a job? What can I do with the heat? There's I forget his full name, but this guy on Twitter, he was around for a while, Moses. He had this phrase, every farmer a miner. And so I took that to heart, and I was like, yeah, what can I do as a farmer? I'm using electricity all the time. Is there a way I can put a Bitcoin miner doing some hashes in between the use of that electricity and the output of this heat? So I like to just talk about how to apply that in a home setting.
Does your dryer still tumble when you do that? So a full tumble, you just turned off the heating element?
Yeah, I actually was able to keep the heating element engaged. So I have to be a little bit careful because if I put it on the wrong setting and I've got the heat coming in from the miner and the heating element, I don't know if that's a fire risk. A lot of the stuff that I do is like, you know, tiptoeing on the edge of danger at my place. So, but yes, all I do is I set it to time dry, turn it to the air dry setting so there's no heat from the heating element, and then all the heat is coming in from the miner. And actually what I found is that there's so much positive pressure from the fans that I have to right now tape the door closed to the dryer, otherwise it'll blow open and stop the cycle. But it works pretty much the same as my dryer did on the medium heat setting. So it's been working great.
Are you still getting the same time dry, like through a load of towels in, dry for an hour? Would you be able to do that with the miner?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same time, but the hardest part was trying to measure the difference in electricity usage, right? Because when I clamp the dryer, what happens is the heating element turns on at the beginning of the cycle, gets really hot, uses like 30 amps right away, and then it turns off and accesses that heat, that heated up metal throughout the cycle. Whereas the miner is just a consistent 15 amps, right? And so I can't really, I'd have to monitor that. I don't have the equipment to monitor how much power it actually takes me to do a cycle on the regular heating element side, so.
And then my last question is, what is the power draw that you're getting from the miner versus the dryer if you were doing full heat? Do you have any idea?
Well, yeah, full heat it's just, when it's at full heat, it's just how long is that heating element on for, but it's always just around that up 30 amps. So it's just how long is it pulling that 30 amps versus the miner, once again, it's like 15 just the whole time it's running.
So his theory here is that you're spending heat anyway, so your dryer's not making you any money. So if you can put something in there that could actually trickle you some money back, some Bitcoin back, then running it for an hour is totally beneficial.
I guess that comes into and you can talk about this with hosting too, your power rate, and how does that affect your economic decision making when you start to do mining?
Yeah, so when you're looking at mining, the biggest thing you're worried about is your OpEx, your operating costs. So if you're running a business, you're making t-shirts, right? You need to know how much those presses cost. I don't know anything about t-shirts. Let's just say laundry mat. You're running washers and dryers, you have your AC, your heat, all your OpEx, all your operating expenses. Whatever that is, you have to be making more than that, otherwise it's not worth it. And so the only OpEx with mining is your electricity costs. So, most miners are just chasing a cheap electricity. They're talking to their power providers, just trying to find the lowest number they can get. Michigan's regulated. We get about 18 cents out the door. Ohio is not. You can get down to 10 cents out the door, and if you kind of jockey these power providers, you can actually get much lower. So anyways, when you're going from just hosting machine, all you care about is that cheap electricity cost. But with these home mining things where you're reusing the heat for other stuff, the electricity rate doesn't matter, right? You could have 100 cents per kilowatt hour, which is astronomical, unheard of. You still have to run your dryer, you still want to have warm clothes. Why not, trickle in some money off of it if you're mining with that?
Are you gonna be able to make money during a 1 hour period of heating your clothes dryer going for an hour? Is that the only time you have your machine going? That particular machine is only going while the dryer is on?
Well, that actually gets into, and I think John can speak to this point, about your choice of mining pool and how you're contributing your hash to the network and how payouts work.
What's the cash flow like? You talk about the cash flow, so
We can get to that. Yeah.
Sure, I'll just go with the cash flow thing. I think there's a lot of smaller scale miners that we're not concerned with cash flow. We're concerned with sats.
Not concerned with fiat.
Right. So you can get 25,000 sats per 100 terahash machine per day currently. And what you would normally do, unless you want to play that lottery like Mike was talking about before, and your chances of hitting a block solo mining on your own with that machine over there at 96 terahash is pretty low. You could go hit it tomorrow, or you could go 20 years and never hit a block. So you want sats. You mine at home. Often the incentive to mine at home is KYC free sats. So you think to yourself, well, I'm 10 cents a kilowatt hour. That makes sense for me to mine. I can actually be profitable there. That 96 terahash machine, the break-even price on it is 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Some of the newer gen machines, an S19 XP, is break-even price is about 13, 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you have one of those machines and that's your rate, you're going to be profitable. Sir, you had a question about that?
Yeah, I know, Carl, you're interested in this, but can you maybe higher level like KYC, non-KYC? Because that's one of the main reasons.
Sure, yeah.
God is saying that it's cheaper, this on exchange, but there's an additional reason.
Yeah, the KYC is know your customer. KYC, AML laws, anti-money laundering laws. So that requires all of the exchanges to know who you are when you want to buy Bitcoin from them. You got to take a picture of your driver's license. You got to say dox yourself, and they potentially can track all of those transactions from the time that you bought that Bitcoin to transfer it to your wallet, unless you're doing some kind of mixing service like Samurai. So you're plugged into the system. But with home mining, you have a choice to be KYC free, because where are you getting your Bitcoin from? Your pool. Pools like Brains, or this Halving wearing today, Lincoin pool. You're contributing all of your hash rate together with other miners all throughout the world. You're all kind of pointing to the same point there, and when you pay out, you're getting a share of the payout, the block reward, which is currently 6.25 Bitcoin, plus all the transactions. Right now, transaction fees as a percentage of the block reward are about 2-3%, so it's not very much. We hope that goes up in the future. So you're getting 6.25 plus transaction fees, and you split that with everybody in the pool based on your hash rate contribution. So your pools don't ask you really any questions. You just sign up by an email, and you point your hash to it, and you get paid out based on you can go over payout schemes, maybe off to the side if you want to ask me about different payout schemes from mining pools and why to choose one over the other. We can go over that. But your pool pays you out on the schedule that you want to be paid out in Bitcoin, and they don't know who you are. And there's also other ways with VPNs to obfuscate where your IP address is if you want to get super shadowy, super coder.
Yeah, you can always get a little bit more private, right?
Yeah.
But I think, so your question was, how am I getting, if I'm only running my clothes dryer for an hour, how am I ever going to get any Bitcoin? What if there's no block that gets hit in that hour?
Pool, you get an hour's worth of credit.
basically the pool that I contribute to is Lincoin pool, and that's a full pay per share pool. So when I'm hashing, they give me the proportion of those payouts in that hash versus another pool that might only pay out when that pool specifically hits a block. And so there's just different types of pools depending on different kinds of mining. In my opinion, when you're doing this intermittent hashing, when you're home mining, my dehydrator doesn't run 24/7. It's only running when I need to dehydrate stuff. And so I want to be a part of a pool that's just going to, I get paid a little less maybe by doing this, but I guarantee that I'm going to get a trickle of something, and now I don't have to solo mine and just shoot for the moon. I can still get a little bit in return. Right. And so, I lost my train of thought there, but
How long you're hashing? If you're only hashing for an hour, is it still advantageous for you to do that?
right, okay, so so the way I think about it is that even though my power rate is so high that the machine is unprofitable, I'm reusing the heat, so I'm basically getting a rebate in sats on my power usage. So that effectively makes the products that I'm making in my dehydrator have a lower cost to produce. So therefore, I can be more competitive if I'm trying to sell this to my pricing too. And so I just think that Bitcoin mining, as the difficulty increases, you'll see less people just chasing the lowest power rate. They'll be doing both. They'll be chasing the lowest power rate, and they'll be saying, how can I create a product with my mining in order to basically create a more competitive environment for whatever it is you're producing. By mining Bitcoin, you're subsidizing your operation to be able to have the cheapest prices.
And keep in mind, you go back maybe 12, 13 years, there were people that shut off their miners because the Bitcoin wasn't worth their electric bill. They were maybe only getting 25 Bitcoin a day, and that was less than what their electricity bill was to mine that 25 Bitcoin. So they shut them off. How smart was that? Look at the big picture. Don't worry too much about a few cents of electricity. Just stack sats. Especially if you can home mine, you're getting non-KYC Bitcoin. It's the way to go.
The question you have to ask is, when are you selling? Are you selling every single payout? No. You might be selling a little bit to cover some of your costs, or if your wife gets angry that we don't have money for groceries and electricity bills are high, you might say, all right, fine, I'm going to sell a little bit of sats to pay for the groceries, keep you off my back for a while, but sure are warm in the winter time. But you don't want to try to hold on to those sats as long as you possibly can. So, are you running your costs constantly? Are you running them every month? Are you running them every 6 months, every year? You have to zoom out. I think, and I'm glad that the Bitcoin psychology presentation was before, because we're not all just running in the same direction that everybody else is running. That Bitcoiners and sovereigns are able to zoom out. That's kind of our superpower. It's a time preference thing, and we all have low time preference. Time isn't what's so important to us in Bitcoin. We have other things that speak to our heart. So you zoom out for a little bit, zoom out for a few years, like Mike said, all right, you turned your machine off that. You missed a chance to get a block reward of 50. Now it's 6.25. In April, it's going to be 3.125. 4 years after that, it's going to have even more. Over 19 million Bitcoin have already been distributed on the network. So it's a different game now, and you're going to be passing up an opportunity.
Well, and so the other thing is, a lot of people say is, well, if you're mining them, it's unprofitable, I'll unplug and I'll just spend my fiat and buy Bitcoin. Well, oftentimes the premium, if you want to get that same KYC free Bitcoin, you're going to pay a premium on that over what spot is at an exchange or other ways of getting it that could be cheaper. And so if you compare acquiring KYC free Bitcoin from like a Bitcoin ATM, what's your premium on that? 15, maybe even 20%. So if you take that into account, if you're really looking for that KYC-free Bitcoin, plugging the miner in makes a lot of sense. Especially, do you have the discipline now to, once you've got this fiat, to go and turn it into Bitcoin? Are you going to do it on a regular basis? If you plug in that miner and you're running it, it's just happening for you. You don't got to think about when you're going to buy it. Is the price high or low? You just want to make sure. Pay attention to the difficulty, honestly, how much is my return for my hash. And so it's just a lot more of a smooth way to DCA into Bitcoin, especially if you really appreciate that KYC-free Bitcoin.
You're building your infrastructure now. You know, your reward, your payout reward, like I said before, is 25,000 sats per 100 terahash machine per day. But like we had a big bull run a couple years ago, when Bitcoin was in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, there was a real premium on machines. Some of that machine right there, I think is probably $9.5 a terahash right now, Nick.
Yeah, used, yeah.
Used, which that machine pretty much only get used. Right now, those machines were going for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a couple years ago. There you go. So now's the time. Machines are cheap. You can build your infrastructure. You can be part of the network. You know, it seems silly. Like some of you think, well, why would I get an S9? You know, it's 1,500 watts. So you can play around with it. That's why. Did you guys go fishing? Do you ride quads or motorcycles or something like that? It's not a particularly expensive hobby. And it gets you started. You say, okay, well, home mining's not for me. The heat capture thing was fun. Then you get with a bunch of buddies and you get a bunch of machines together and find somebody that does hosting and send machines there. Really, truly, we have to keep the hash rate away from the marathons and the riots and the core scientifics. Because then it's not a decentralized network anymore. They're just running the show.
Well, and if anything were to happen to those facilities, thank God we're around, because if that gets blown up or the cord gets cut for whatever reason, you know I'm waiting on the sidelines to fire up when that difficulty drops because all that hash rate disappeared. And so if there's all of us all around with a little bit even on the sidelines, it's not profitable now. But it may be at some point in time where something happened like the China ban, right? When half the hash rate went offline, it came right back because everybody was sitting on the sidelines with unprofitable machines that now became profitable again.
But everybody that was plugged in when China took all their miners offline, doubled their revenue, like almost overnight.
It was good times for a few months.
Good time to mine. And if you want to get your miners set up right now before halving, because you're going to chase on the next cycle, these machines are going to go back to over 10 grand a piece, and you can get them way cheaper than that right now. Nobody's running out and doing that, which is why you can do that.
Show of hands, who knows what the halving is? I can explain it real quick. So Bitcoin mining does a few things, just to go back to the basics a little bit. There's three things that Bitcoin miner is doing. They are distributing the 21 million coins fairly, they are securing transactions, and they are confirming new transactions. And what this means is when I'm looking at the screen right here, none of these transactions over here are actually confirmed. If I send anyone in this room Bitcoin and it sits here, it is not confirmed. It can be reversed until a miner actually picks it up and mines it, puts it into a block. And then on top of that, as these transactions get buried deeper and deeper, we just mined another one. As you were saying, you can reverse these if you have enough hash rate, which is impossible. But anyways, older transactions are harder to reverse because they're buried much deeper. But I think one of the most important things of Bitcoin mining is the distribution mechanism, and that's where the halving comes in. So in a fiat system, we can just print $1 billion and hand it off to Ukraine, and nobody has a vote on that. It's just poof out of thin air, boom. With Bitcoin, everyone knew from day one there would be 21 million, but how do you hand those out without being unfair? Do I give $1 million to you, $1 million to you? No, that's not fair. He takes $1 million. So the way they did it is they made it front loaded. So at the very beginning, every block, 15 Bitcoin were given out, every single block. And after 4 years, it's, how many blocks is that? 210,000? After pulling numbers out, I've been impressed. Every 4 years, or the equivalent of blocks, that subsidy goes from 50 to 25. So if you're a miner, all of a sudden, overnight, when that block hits, that pay cut, yep. And so that happened every 4 years, and that's how they pass up the 21 million over time. It's very front loaded. The first 10.5 million are handed out in the first 4 years, and then the last one isn't handed out until 2106 or something like that. So that's what they're talking about having, you know, getting set up before this pay cut comes into effect next April. And if you're not set up with, you know, a home mining setup, a cheap power rate, that pay cut could, you know, skin you.
We were talking about that a little bit, like this winter is the last one that you get to heat with the reward as it is before the halving. So it's like a great time to really get those last big juicy blocks before it gets cut in half. If you're thinking about it, it's a good time to fire it up, heat your house, base heater, whatever it might be.
Things are going to change drastically with the next halving, or real mining, say halving. You know, typically for every halving, it's taken 6 months to a year for that price action to really happen. For people to get that FOMO and go, oh my God, there's not that many Bitcoin coming out into circulation as there were the previous 4-year period. So you can look at the first halving and say, okay, well, it took a little bit, actually took a little bit of a dip like within the first couple of days, and then gone up after that. But each time the going up part is a shorter period of time. I'm not making any predictions because that's just plain stupid. Any technical analysis of what's going to happen after the halving, looking 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and 4 years before that, you're not going to be able to predict anything in the future. It's just going to be interesting. Put it that way. Just watch this April, the halving, watch price action, and sit back and have some fun, because I think it is going to be fun for this halving. Yes, Ben?
You guys are pretty convincing. I'm persuaded. Is there anyone in this building that I can talk to get my hands on some money?
Well, I think you know the answer to that. You can talk to Chet. He's got plenty of S9s. You can talk to KaboomRack's Nix. He will sell you individual miners, and I'm not going to do a KaboomRack's commercial right now. But KaboomRack's is one of those organizations that will sell you a bunch of miners, or they'll sell you one. They're not some strange Chinese people that you got to track down on a Telegram group and say, we want you to order 5, 10 miners at a time. That's the only way we can deliver your miner to you. Nick will sell you one-off miners.
We are strange.
You are strange, indeed, yeah. But they're not Chinese, so it's the strange and Chinese combination.
You also got the concept of hash the torch, which I like to say that S9s are the gateway drug to mining. And so you should talk about hash the torch.
They're on 110.
Sure. Okay, hash the torch. Well, that's a concept and a phrase that I came up with last year when we came with our Pleb Miner Month. And the whole impetus for Pleb Miner Month was to just get people more involved, get the education out there for doing mining on a smaller scale. And, when you talk to a lot of miners, and that's something that when I talked to Chet called me up and said, what are you doing, man, with this Pleb Miner Month thing? I heard your wife's podcast talking on Bit by Bit podcast, talking about the miner being the heartbeat of the home, man. I want to be a part of that. And I said, that's awesome. He's like, I got machines to give away. I'll give a machine away. We just got machines over there to give away. He needs this talk about it. But that's the concept, is hash the torch. Chet has the knowledge. He's got these machines sitting around. I've got 4 S9s in my garage right now. I should probably be doing a little bit more work to give them away to somebody. Teach somebody how to turn the miner on, how to point it to a pool, what to do about noise, what to do about heat. And just pass on that torch of information. And that's something that I like what Mike does in Bitcoin 101 do, is they're hashing the torch and passing the torch of all kinds of information. You don't have to be a Bitcoin apostle and get in people's faces and say, oh, the fiat money's falling apart, the government's controlling you, and CBDCs are coming, and if you don't get on Bitcoin, you're all going to die. You don't have to do that. There's something that you know about Bitcoin. Please pass it on to somebody, and that's what we try to do with mining. Reach out to somebody first. Do you have a spare miner? Yes, I do. You want to come over to my house? You want to play in the garage? We'll turn it on. You want to go over to my house? You want to go over to Carl's? See how he dehydrates all kinds of different things. Do that. Get the word out. Reach out to people that mine, and those that mine, and do those kind of things. Reach out to people and pass your knowledge along.
We do something similar to that with the Detroit meetup. I had an S9 that I was not using, so I brought it in, big ugly box. Who wants to take this home? If you run it for an hour or a whole month or 3 months, I don't care. You're gonna learn so much by just plugging this thing in. And I think we passed it around to like 8, 10 people now. The second guy who brought it back, he taped like a big old book to it, and everyone puts their like Twitter handle and a bunch of stickers in it. So it's pretty cool. The people that come back from it, it's like they don't want to buy a machine or own one, but they get a chance to hash for even an hour, and they learn about pools, noise, heat, like everything.
Setting up a node.
No
Yeah.
node in the mining, but they need to learn that too.
Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you get your S9 and you plug it in and you learn how mining suits your situation, you're gonna upgrade to a better machine. And at that point, now you know something, and you take your neighbor, your friend, you pass that S9 along, and then they get going. And this is how we start to build. I keep saying that there's enough Bitcoiners out here already. We don't need to orange pill new people. We just need to unify together the Bitcoiners that we have here. And so by everybody participating, teaching each other about nodes, teaching each other about mining, this is how we build this strong core community of the Bitcoiners. That's how the circular economy starts. And then people will be coming and knocking on the door, how do I get involved? Instead of us saying, you should come with us, they'll be asking you, how do they get involved?
If you're going to get into it, now is definitely the time for this halving. I think in November of 21 was the most profitable time to be a miner ever, and November of 22 was the least profitable time to be a miner, because that's how quick the metrics can change. So you want to front run that, because if you were chasing your miners in 21, you were paying a lot of money for them, you weren't getting them right away, and you were waiting to get them plugged in. And while this has all happened, the hash rate is exploding. You're getting more competition out there. There's only 6.25 Bitcoin getting issued every 10 minutes, and you split that with everybody out there mining. So you want to get ahead of the next FOMO ramp where everything gets expensive.
What's that saying about planting a fruit tree? I grow a lot of fruit trees. It's like the best time to plant a fruit tree is yesterday. Well, you know, the sooner you get that miner figured out, then it maybe doesn't work for you, right? Maybe you don't like whatever it is about it. But anyways, the sooner you figure that out, the sooner you'll know you do want to get that next upgrade in efficiency, higher terahash. I started off with one S9 from Chet, and I found another one. Then I got a little bit of a better machine, and now I've got 4 miners, and I'm looking to get more. It's like I found out that it works pretty well for my situation.
Particular personality.
I love hashing. Look at my pool, seeing that. Oh, I just love it.
Yes, sir.
So I've heard S9, S19. Is there an S29? Is there an S39? What's out there?
S19 XP would be the next one, and S19 Hydro. That's just the naming conventions of Bitmain. There are other manufacturers of miners besides Bitmain. Bitmain and WhatsMiner are the two main machines that everybody uses, but there's also Canaan, which Carl has one. And recently there were 2 new miners that came on the for sale in a fleet aspect. You can't get one-offs. One is called Deci Miner, which is about the dumbest name I've ever heard in mining, but it's a pretty impressive machine. It's like a Cadillac of miners. And then another organization called Epic Blockchain created a miner that actually uses Intel chips. Beyond that, there are a lot of open source protocols. Jack Dorsey from Twitter, Square, also has an open source mining consortium that he's inviting people to come and contribute to and figure out a way to get an open source miner build going on. So there's a lot of things happening in mining and manufacturing, but yeah, the two kings of the hill are WhatsMiner and Bitcoin.
Which is the S9 and S19?
WhatsMiner would be like M20, M30, M31, and M50. You'll see an M in front of WhatsMiners, and Bitmain will be the S17, S19.
Do you know how many of the big guys are capturing the heat you were talking about? Like for us, for our
Not so much. No, they really don't care. Some of their power purchase agreements are so low. Why would they bother with that? They get paid to participate in demand response programs and curtailment. I did talk to a guy a few weeks ago who was in Marietta, Ohio, and supposedly they have a 50 megawatt farm that they're going to build, and it is going to be focused on heat capture. They want to build an industrial park around this 50 megawatt mine. I don't know if it's ever going to get off the ground, but yeah, there are plans to do more heat capture stuff at an industrial scale. It's just not there yet. And that brings me to something else. Like, that's why I get excited about people doing home mining, because it's the small scale miners that are really innovating. It's the guys like Carl that innovate. It's guys like another buddy of ours, Dirty Shotya, who's out in Wyoming, and he's even mining off solar and bypassing the power supplies and going direct into the machine. You're going to have that level of innovation at small scale. Number one, because there's passion at small scale. I don't know how much passion there is at Riot. They're so fiat based that money and fiat money is their main concern. But when you get the small scale miners who are passionate about Bitcoin, passionate about mining, they're the ones that do all the innovation. The innovation comes from the bottom up, just like it did at the beginning. Satoshi was a home miner. Satoshi didn't start in a data center. He started in his garage or in his basement or wherever he was, and invited his friends that he knew in chat rooms to come and mine with him. So that's where the innovation comes from. It's from the bottom up. It's because you have to be scrappy as a small scale miner. Your margins are super low. You don't have VCs come in and rescuing you. You're not declaring bankruptcy on an LLC. That's it. If you're not profitable in miner, you gotta figure out a way to get rid of these machines. You gotta apologize to your wife for cashing out your 401k to buy a bunch of machines. It means something more to you, so you have to innovate. You have to find those little tiny places where you can make your money back. And heat capture, of course, is the lowest hanging fruit within that. Why not? They pump out heat. Use it for something.
Do you know?
I'd say that's a good question for Tyler on capturing heat for a big operation.
I think you hit it right on the head. There's not really any large-scale places that are doing it. I think there's some places in Canada that's doing it for homes, but it's not large-scale. It might be a handful of machines versus, Riot, Marathon, all them running thousands and thousands and thousands of machines.
Well, and then to that point, these machines do break, and so when you have a facility with thousands, tens of thousands of machines, some of your operating expenses aren't just the power usage, it's also the maintenance of the equipment. And so if you now start to apply, you have that layer of maintenance that's involved, and now when you're starting to do weird stuff like put food on next to it, there's a whole nother level of shit that can go wrong there. And so maybe it actually goes from being profitable to unprofitable because of the scale that you have to do this heat recapture at. At my scale, I can get in there and fiddle with everything until it's just right because I'm only working with a handful of machines. 10,000 machines, I don't know if they want to take the time to try and figure out how to make beef jerky or whatever.
That's perfect for large scale.
They put a cow in, that's all they have to do.
Just put a cow in the hot aisle. I agree with you. These machines are pretty idiot-proof. You plug them in and they, if it gets too hot, they will turn off. They do not want to break themselves. But, repairs is a total nightmare. I had a train of thought I lost. Nope, I don't remember.
Something about
Yeah, question over there.
some level somewhere in the north. You're mining in the north, right?
We can talk about curtailment. There's, at that scale, the only thing I can say of reusing a resource is curtailing. So up in Canada, it gets very cold. Down in Texas, it gets very hot. And on the hottest days in the summer and on the coldest days in the winter, everybody's turning on their AC or heat. And Bitcoin miners can actually jockey or negotiate with the power grid and say, hey, we're using all this power. When you need it, you tell us, and we will turn off our machines so you have all that excess energy to use on these heaters or these air conditioners. But that's just kind of a mechanism for the power grids to balance how much energy they're using at any given time. If everybody turns their AC unit on, they either have to produce more power or turn off something so that power is available to hand out to customers. But that's not heat recycling, that's kind of just energy balancing. No, I really don't know of any like large-scale people that are trying to recycle it.
And Bitcoin miners are the only large-scale industrial electrical users that can be basically shut down immediately and cranked back up. Nobody else, your aluminum plant cannot do that, not even close.
There are organizations, I kind of channeling a friend of mine. If you want to know about energy and Bitcoin mining in energy, follow a guy on Twitter named Bitcoin Baseload, base as a B-A-S-S, as a musical instrument. Follow him on Twitter if you really want to understand Bitcoin mining and energy. There are other industrial services that can turn off and turn on like Bitcoin, but they're few and far between. And when they turn on, they're not having a load shape that is standardized. Your load shape at an aluminum smelting plant is going to be all over the place. Maybe in the morning, that's when they bring in the aluminum, so it's low, then midday it gets a little bit higher, and everybody goes on lunch and it's lower, and then it's higher. And so you have this load shape that looks like that. Bitcoin mining's load shape is pancake shaped. It's the same basically all the time. So there are electricity generators out there that might like something like that. We just have to get the word out and speak to them and let them know, hey, we're not kooks. We have these facilities. We might go to a substation, and that substation was built out with the intent that there's going to be some light industrial and there's going to be housing and stuff around it. But you want to get your infrastructure built first. Hey, you're only using 20% of this substation. Hi, I'm a Bitcoin miner. Can I come in here and use some of that power? Sure, we weren't selling it anyway. Now I can give you sub 10 cent, just 5 cent kilowatt hour rates. So that is, what Bitcoin mining can offer the electrical industry. Sir, you had a question?
So for an average residential home, are you going to need a new electrical service to be installed, or another panel, or?
How psychotic are you getting? How soon? You going absolute? Oh, for an S19, you probably have the capacity within your panel. So you have a 200 amp panel at home. I'm sure you've got plenty of empty slots. You just need a 20 amp dual pole breaker, and some kind of 12 gauge wire.
You probably have to run wiring.
Three wire coming off of there.
You probably have to run wiring, if you have an electric oven or electric dryer, that's all 240, but your standard plug in the wall is 110. So the power is there at the home, but you need a thick enough wire and a plug dedicated for that thing. Otherwise, you will start melting. RV is 15 amps or 30?
RV is 30 and 50. And the legs of RV are just two 120 legs that don't actually combine to create a 240 circuit. So the RV is a little bit different in that sense.
Yeah, you just have to ask yourself the question, are you using electric heat already? So is it so much that when your furnace kicks on and your miner kicks on, is that going to overload your panel or not? And most of the time you have plenty of space to handle a few machines. Now, a lot of the pleb miner guys have figured out the limitations on their panels, on the transformers even outside of them. For sure. And so you can get there, but just to get started, I don't think that's really a huge concern.
If you're not, just call an electrician. $50 an hour and come over and run your circuit.
Up and over to Bitcoin 101, we put two S19s in there. We put new breakers in. The panel was good. We added two. We ran new wire to them, and basically they've run for the last year and a half without doing anything. But I don't think we can go much more than what we got right now. We got a 145-year-old building.
It's very warm.
It's warm right now.
So for a home miner, from the time you got your miner to the time you're mining, talk about a couple hours, talk about 20 minutes.
Sure, if you already have a plug and a circuit ran to dedicate to that miner, unboxing probably takes just as much time as anything else. This would be your process. You get the machine home, you've already called your electrician, he's already put in a circuit for you. You already know where you're going to get rid of that heat. You're already comfortable with the amount of noise that it's going to make, where you're going to put fan shrouds on either end and duct it in some way, or put it in a box. There's all kinds of different ways to mitigate heat and to mitigate noise. Let's say you figured that out, you got a hole in the wall, you're going to run it in your garage, you know how you're going to get rid of that heat. You unbox the machine, take it out, you plug it in the power, you power it up, you run some Ethernet to it. It's going to obtain an IP address, you log into it, maybe scan your router there to find out what the IP address of that machine is, what the router assigned the IP address as, and you punch that into your URL, 192.168.1.199. That's what IP address your machine was assigned. And you log into that, and depending on the manufacturer, you can put admin or root, something like that, log into the machine. If you've already acquired what mining pool that you want to point your machine at, I recommend Lincoin. It's titled by Reference Brains. That's up to you. Go Lincoin. If we can talk about pools, you know, Carl kind of touched on it a little bit. If you're doing more incremental stuff, and you want to go for an SPPS payout, if you like hitting blocks and stuff like that, in the long term, maybe PPLNS is good for you. Anyway, so say you've already decided what pool you already have an account on there, you've set up the account, you're going to go on there on your pool and find out where do I need to point this machine. It'll tell you. We want you to point your machine at our node that's here. Our nodes create all the blocks, all the block templates, and decide what transactions go in there and what their blocks are going to look, proposed blocks are going to look like. And you point your machine to it. And then you hit save, and after a little bit, you'll observe on your pool that you are getting hash rate contribution under your account. And once you've built out a minimum threshold and payouts on the pool, it'll pay out to the wallet that you've set up. So it can be set up quickly if you get all your ducks in a row before you get your machine. Total time figuring out pool and electrician, it might be a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you've already got your S9 and you plug that in, then you've figured out everything, right? The difference between plugging in an S9 and an S19 is really the power. You just go from 110 to 220 or 120 to 240 or whatever it is. But if you plugged in an S9 and you've got hashing and you've received your payout and got it all set up, the process is exactly the same for a better machine. And so, for example, when I first got my S9, and let's say I didn't have Chet around to help me, it might have taken me some time fumbling around, figuring all this stuff out. But then, after I got the next machine, it was like you said, you open it up, you plug it in, you find the IP address, and you just know what to do. You've already got everything figured out. Very simple and straightforward. So.
And that's why an S9 is fun to hang out with. That's why Hash the Torch is important. That's why S9 lending programs and local meetups is important. Because you get a lot of that stuff out of the way. You make a machine home and say, this is the dumbest thing I've ever thought of. What a stupid cockamamie idea. I'm going to go ahead and go host it. Holy crap, didn't even realize I had an 18 cents a kilowatt hour of power. It wasn't something that really tripped me up now that I see that I'm not getting as many sats as I could if I were just DCA in fiat to Bitcoin. Or you might say, yeah, this is kind of fun. And then now that you've got a lot of those initial hurdles, you've passed those.
That's when you call your electrician.
Yeah.
Hook me up.
You do some crazy stuff there, please.
Yeah.
Questions?
Down here.
Yes, sir.
Can you speak a little more to the dynamics of the halving? Was reading an article a week or two ago saying that with the halving coming up, with hash rate growing at the rate that it is, with energy prices and markets where they are, that we're not at something like a $90,000 price by halving. That's what does that mean for the mining industry, and what's it going to mean for the homeowners?
Sure. If you tune into the next episode of Pleb Miner Monthly on Bit by Bit Pod, you will hear an even longer explanation of what has happened in previous halvings and the next halving. But I'll give you the short and sweet of it. Yes, I read that article as well, and I even read it on the show. Yeah, we're going to need Bitcoin to be near 100,000 in order for a lot of these institutional miners who already have these power purchase agreements with ERCOT or PJM or something like that, larger generation, electricity generation organizations. You better have your machines purchased. You better have a little bit of a runway. my partner and I on the show have a bet. He says you're going to need a 1-year runway if you're not connecting to like VC, capital that can just keep pumping you up and keeping you through the halving. If you're small scale and you don't have a long runway, it's going to be difficult. That's my opinion, and that's that guy's opinion as well. And he said technical analysis of price and hash rate going up and what difficulty is going to be is all speculation. But it is going to hurt. And like I said before, price action goes up quickly a couple halvings ago. Last halving, it didn't go up as quickly. The China ban happened during the last halving, so there's like a lot of funky things that can go on. So there's really no way to predict that. But in my opinion, it's going to hurt the next halving. There's going to be that lag in the price action.
So what you're saying to me is that,
I would say that the good news is Bitcoin does not care. This network continues to run mining block, tick-tock, next block, we like to say. So the metrics and the dynamics and the financials will all work themselves out. Some people will be going bankrupt, they'll be selling machines, other people will be buying machines. This market will function, this hash rate is not going away.
well, yeah, so if the price doesn't go up, to me that says that the difficulty is going to go down. And so for me as a home miner, that sounds good because now my rebate and my sats increases. At the same time, let's say the price goes up and the difficulty goes up. As a home miner, that's good news to me because the rebate that I'm getting is more valuable. And so if you're mining at home and you're accepting this rebate on the hash, you really don't care either way because it just changes the amount of rebate that you're getting. You're still getting sats at the end of the day and you're using that heat for some work. And the work is what you're after, not necessarily the hashes.
All right, we have one more question back here and then we'll have some lunch here.
I don't know what you guys are using, but you can access your full account from anywhere and kind of monitor what's going on, but there are all these different SaaS softwares that allow you to monitor entire farms. You can essentially set up a server at your site, and then you can reboot the machine remotely. You can kind of track things remotely. There's one called Foreman that a lot of companies use. I think you can actually get it for free if you're running under like 15 machines. Is there others that you guys know of?
Well, Lincoin, as a matter of fact, has an agent as well. Yeah. In internet, a lot of the remote miners are using Starlink, or they're using the 5G hotspot, which, in my opinion, the 5G hotspot is suboptimal, especially if you're doing hosting, and a lot of people are going to want to log into their machines if you're doing a lot of onesie-twosies. The hotspot's probably not the best option, of course. My fiat job, I'm a telephone man, so I'm going to say fiber is going to be your first choice if it's available to you. Probably Starlink second, I think it's a good service, and then maybe 5G would be your last choice.
It's not really about speed though. Like you don't have to have. It's about latency. Like you don't have to have the top-notch internet. I think LTE is pretty low latency, and satellite is low latency. I don't know how Starlink compares and all that, but you can have like a dial-up connection and have enough communication back and forth. You might. Whatever the latency and lag is going to affect you more than the speed itself. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing dial-up, but I'm just kind of putting it in the context of everything.
It's possible.
I've turned on the hotspot on my phone and connected that to a Wi-Fi bridge, which then I can plug an Ethernet cable into my miner, and I mine with the hotspot on my phone in a pinch. So, and at home, really, there's ways to get. I have one today and I haven't tried it. I know you couldn't get yours to work. The bonnets, there's a little Wi-Fi bridge extender repeater that you can get that Wi-Fi signal to your miner and then get an Ethernet cable out. And so you don't necessarily have to be running Ethernet cables all throughout your house. But the factor there is like how much that thing costs $25. I can do the same thing with Ethernet cable for a fraction of that cost. And so in my situation, I don't want to make my profitability less by spending on this fancy Wi-Fi technology. I'm just pulling cables everywhere and hiding them and crawling in my crawl space and get dirty just so I can save that extra few dollars so I don't have to earn as many sats back on my heat use.
I also have a podcast on IT and telecom within mining. So if you want to listen to that one.
That's a great one. Thank you.
Sounds good, guys. So get some deep.
Can I just announce something real quick?
Hold on, we're gonna do one more. We're gonna do Curtis. Go ahead.
Okay, before the lunch thing, if you guys want to take a look at the S19 over here, it is being auctioned off. Carl doesn't want me to mention this because he wants that machine. But it is being auctioned off, and all the proceeds are going to go to Bishop Beach. It's going to be a fight between PF and Carl. So, if you want to get into home mining, you can take a look at that miner and put a bid on it. And like I said, all the proceeds are going towards what this whole thing is designed to do.
Oh, and also I will have my Bitcoin mining dehydrator here later this afternoon. If you guys want to check that out, I'll be dehydrating hops right over here, and we can talk about how that process all works too.
Thank you.